Half a day students, I am Governor Lou Leon Guerrero. You all have been through a year of big changes. We've had to adapt and make big changes to keep our families and our island safe. But with change comes opportunity and a chance to try new things like PBS University. While Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio and I will continue to do our part to keep our island safe, you students have a part to play as well. Your part is to keep learning and to keep up with your lessons. That's why I am happy to see you here ready to learn with PBS University. PBS University is a way to bring a continuous educational curriculum to you while you stay safe at home during this time. To help you keep up with your studies, we asked our friends at PBS Guam and the Guam Department of Education to put together this episode. Thank you for doing your part and have a great lesson.
Hafade Guahusi, Jessica Nangauta. I am a lancera. I grow a lot of food, medicine for our island. I'm so glad to be speaking to you today, future farmers, I hope. Today we're going to be talking about raising poultry, raising chickens for eggs, for meat. We need you, the next generation, to help strengthen our food security and food sovereignty by raising your own produce, raising your own livestock. Come on, I'll show you what we're doing here at the farm. So some of the things we do here at the farm is we raise egg-laying hens for their eggs. So we have really fresh eggs daily, we collect. And also when the birds are done laying, that's also source of meat. So you can spend some good time with your family and learn from your elders how to process the chicken when they're done laying eggs. You can have your own meat for kadu or chicken broth. For generations, our manana, our ancestors, our elders have raised their own food, and we're here to, also continue that tradition. So we need a lot of you young folks to come out and start raising your own food again. 1 egg a day for up to 2 years, and at the end of 2 years, you can even have your own meat bird for kadu or for the family party or fiesta.
Hi, I'm Chris Rosario from Department of Agriculture, University of Guam. And we're featuring Paul Packbier with PCR Island Honeybee. Today we'll be opening up a beehive and showcasing what a beekeeper is all about.
So the first thing before we open a hive, bees, they really communicate with each other through pheromones or smells. So we use a smoker to kind of throw a little confusion into the colony. The smoke will keep them from communicating, but it also triggers a instinctive response. The only thing they can really do is eat as much honey as they can and flee or abscond. So if you use smoke, it kind of triggers that. They start eating honey and that calms them down a little bit.
So what he's doing now is actually breaking the wood apart, because bees will tend to actually make what we call propolis. So you can see it on the wood already. But that propolis is to kind of keep all the pests out.
So back in the 1800s, there was a Reverend, Mr. Langstroth, and he figured out that if there's a space that's larger than 5/8 of an inch, the bees will put comb in it. If it's less, if it's a little crack, the bees will put propolis in it, so they close it. But if it's exactly that space, like you see in between, and he calls it bee space, the bees will leave it alone. And that really revolutionized beekeeping. We came up with this framework.
It's called the Langstroth.
So I'm trying to break this first frame free from the propolis. See this frame, this has capped honey. So when the nectar, you still here, you see some uncapped honey. So when bees get nectar from flowers, they have an enzyme in their honey stomach, and it starts to convert the sugars in it, and then they will evaporate the water. So nectar is very dilute sugar, right? If you eat a flower, it's not that sweet really, but the bees will evaporate the water, and if it's less than 17% water, it's honey, and they cap it, and they put this little wax capping on there.
And it prevents the honey from getting watered down over time, because of course the humidity always plays a role in how much water can get into the honey.
This way it's pretty much, it lasts forever. And this is heavy, this one. This is definitely ready for harvesting. Look at this beautiful capped honeycomb. So, and this is dry, so this is wax. So what the beekeeper will do, we'll shake the bees off, take this with us, and then I cut the cappings off with a knife. It opens up all the comb, and then I put it in an extractor, kind of a centrifuge, and it swings out the honey. And then the empty comb, what I call wet comb, then I give it back to them, and they clean it out and they can reuse it. You don't have to do it. You can also take this wax and just squeeze all the honey out, but then the bees will have to rebuild all that wax, and it takes quite a bit of energy.
More energy.
What this frame, this Langstroth hive, enables us to do, so there's 3 boxes here, and the brood, so the eggs and the larvae, are probably in like a baseball size ball in the middle, but the bees will bring the nectar in and they store it above there. So it allows us to just grab the honey, and we can take these boxes apart also and inspect the brood and make sure that the queen is still laying eggs and that's a healthy hive. But we can, with very little disturbance, we can harvest and basically steal some of their supplies. Depends on how large your colony is, how efficient they are, on the surroundings, of course, where they get the nectar.
Right, where they have the nectar, exactly.
On the weather, how much rain is there, how many storms are there, and so it's a healthy hive. So this is definitely a mature hive. Can definitely, and with honey, we sell it by weight, but you can probably get like 45 pounds of honey out of a box like this. But again, it depends. Sometimes I would come here and I say, well, I leave maybe 2 or 3 frames, take the other 7, and then give them, wet frame, old wax frames back. And I come back 3 weeks later and they filled half of it. So for Guam beekeepers, it's from December to March. That's our high nectar flow time. When the rains start coming and they wash the nectar out of flowers or kills flowers, then it goes down. So, if I were to collect honey from this hive in July, come back 3 weeks later, it might not have anything, or they may, at one point, if there's prolonged spell of rain or storm, they may actually start consuming the honey that they stored in it, because that's why they're storing it, for the lean times, right? When there's no nectar coming in from the surrounding area, this is their food, this is their pantry.
Bees kind of really connect everything on kind of all aspects of agriculture, and partly because they forage for mainly almost anything. They are general pollinators. Some native pollinators that we have are particularly pollinators for those native plants, which is they're also really, really important. But in terms of agricultural production, where you want certain crops to be pollinated and to produce fruit, the bees, again, being a general pollinator, and they work again by the thousands, not like some native bees where there's only a single or just a couple of them. But you're talking about 1,000 bees that are a general pollinator which makes them very efficient for, and again, very important for our agricultural system and our environment as a whole.
If a bee would go to a mango tree and then take some nectar and then go to an apple tree, then that doesn't pollinate. But if a bee decides that, oh, that mango tree is good, they keep going back and they'll recruit their sisters. Yep. So 40, 50,000 bees in here. Most of them are female worker bees. They'll come back if a bee finds a new source, like say in the wet season, there's not a lot of nectar going around. They find a place, there's a patch of flowers or this chain of love is blooming. Okay. They take some of the nectar, they come back and they do something called a waggle dance or a bee dance. And by giving some of that nectar to some of her sisters, and then she does this figure 8 in a certain direction, and by waggling and how big that figure 8 is, she communicates. Now these are insects, they're not humans or not even dogs, they're an insect, but they communicate from one bee to the other. If you go in this direction for this far, so actually communicate the distance, then the other bees will start going there also based on where the sun is. So the waggle dance communicates based on where the sun is now, go there in this direction for that far, and this is where you will find this nectar now. Bees are not really aggressive unless you want to take their house or you start to collect honey. So then they will try to defend the colony, but in general, so we're not doing very intrusive work here. You can see all these bees lined up here with their big eyes, and then they're watching us. So you start pulling them apart, then they may activate and try to sting you, which they can only do once. Because they only can sting you once and then they will die. So that's a big difference between bees and wasps, is a bee will die after she stings you. So they are not that quick on the draw. They'll start to warn you, they buzz you, they bump into you, and then they'll sting you. But when they do sting you, they release a pheromone, an alarm pheromone, and that attracts other bees, and they come and they will try to sting you also. So you can have a little bit of a chain reaction going, and that's why we use the smoke to kind of disperse.
Yeah, it kind of hinders that pheromone.
And the communicating between them. We don't have winters to worry about. We don't have varroa mites or other pests that are decimating hives worldwide. We do have our own pests though, and a lot of them are invasives, like cane toad. Cane toads love bees, and some of the hives, if you don't, that's why we all like to put them up high, because these toads with their 8-inch long tongues, they will come up to an entrance and they'll pick off all your returning bees, and they'll eat thousands of them. The latest one is the greater banded hornet. It's a big hornet that has an orange-yellow band around the back, and they will come and they'll attack a bee hive. They'll take the adults, bite the head off and take the body. They're carnivores, they eat meat. But they will also eat the honey. They
usually hover at the entrance of the colony, almost like what we've seen in like Discovery Channel with the Asian giant hornet. That's basically a cousin of the greater banded hornet. But what they do, they kind of hover around the colony. They also use the scent. They use a pheromone to mark the colony, and then actually go back to their sisters and say to follow the scent, so that now they can plan a massive attack on bee colonies. Like what makes beekeeping on Guam very unique, in the United States, they have what we call monocrops, right? And those monocrops are kind of like thousands of acres of one specific crop. But here on Guam, we don't have that large scale agriculture going. So we have small scale, which gives the bees the opportunity to forage for many other different types of crops. So it's not, they're not concentrated to just almonds or apples for those acres. They're actually going grocery shopping for different types of food that they forage for. About 145 different species of plants right now that we know of, that they are pollinating and serving as basically as a huge pollinator for. So
organic honey is a hoax. So organic honey, there's, besides one bee farmer on the Big Island in Hawaii that was able to show that his bees forage a certain area and there's no pesticides being used, and we don't know as beekeepers, we don't know where these bees forage. They go in a 2-mile radius from their colony, So they can go, you know, across the street, they can go a mile down the way at a farmer, so you cannot certify that indeed all the crops that they service are organic. So therefore the organization that certifies foods to be organic in the US, basically there's no US honey that is deemed organic except for one exception in Hawaii. So what about this organic honey you see on the store shelves? If you read the label, it's all from South America. You might go, why is that? It's like, well, whoever certifies organic honey in South America is not such a big stickler about the certification requirements. And internationally, if one country deems something to be organic, we accept it as such. So all the organic honey that you buy in the US are from Brazil, big honey producing country, and Mexico. So, you know, what I tell people, you know, we don't have large scale farming on Guam as far as, you know, monocrops and lots of pesticide use. We do not have to treat our hives for varroa mites. So our honey really, truly is as organic as it can be, as pure as it can be. You know, this is like from the flower to the hive to the bottle. There's nothing in between. So it's a really good stuff. Yeah. About 2 years ago, so I actually sent 3 jars of our Guam honey to a Good Food Foundation in San Francisco, and they had a blind tasting of honeys from across the United States, and we won. Our Guam honey won Good Foods Award in 2020, and then last year the same honey but then crystallized into a creamed honey won the 2021 also. So we have really, really good honey on Guam, and very, very proud of what the bees produce. It's not me, it's the bees produce that. You know, the lifespan of a bee is about 6 weeks from egg to the end of their lifespan, and the last 3 weeks are when they spend outdoors, so they're foraging. So when they're born, they become cleaners, then they help feed larvae in the hive, and then they progress and they become guard bees, and then from guard bee now they become foragers. So they'll forage one of 3 things, either pollen for food for the larvae, nectar where they make the honey from, or water. And the water they bring in to maintain temperature in the hive. They actually evaporate water to reduce the temperature. So you'll see that in Guam quite a bit because of our high daytime temperatures. But when they progress, when they become foragers, they work so hard that within 3 weeks, you know, if they don't get hit by a car or eaten by a toad or a hornet, their wings pretty much just stop working. They fall apart. You know, if you see an old forager bee and you look at her wings, they're all in tatters. They're like frayed. And sometimes you'll see a bee come out and just fall down. She can't fly anymore. And she doesn't go back and goes, "Ow, somebody, you know, help me." It's like, no, they just keep going and she'll never come back. You know, it's a one-way trip basically. But so you lose, the queen lays about 3,000 eggs per day. Right?
That's right.
3,000 to 5,000, may sometimes, depending the needs of the colony. But that's also the amount of bees you lose every day, 3,000 to 5,000. You know, from either working themselves to death, or getting killed by pests, or just, you know, by a beekeeper that opens the hive and put the frame back in, and you squeeze a couple of bees, or you drop the lid on them, and when you first start out, you feel really bad about it. And then they sting you a couple of times and go, "Oh, that's okay. They're taking one for the team."
But this is where we talk about like the management of a bee colony too. You don't want to check them too much. You want to check them at least every month. You know, once a month is fine. Even once every 2 months at times, because we don't want to overmanage. Because if we check in constantly every day, in that 1 month, you lose 1,000 bees just from opening and closing the bee colony. And so at this point, you kind of just want Mother Nature take its place, you know. So when I do a harvest, I scrape all the wax off, because I want to end up also using that wax to melt, and you know, because that's another type of product. But oftentimes when I'm done, you know, squeezing all the honey out of that wax, I kind of leave it out for the bees, right? So then I see these bees now collecting that wax from the
So
from the
they put it in
comb.
their pollen basket.
To put it in their pollen basket the same way they would do that, as if they were collecting pollen, and go right in and start building again. And it just goes to show how versatile providing a whole source of products, valuable products that we like to use today.
So, and honey is naturally antibacterial, antifungal. Stuff doesn't grow in there. As a matter of fact, back in the Roman times and the Middle Ages, you know, armies, they would go to war. A lot of men would die from infections, you know, wounds. So you just get cut by a knife or a sword, and then that starts to get infected. And they found out back in those days already, if you have a wound dressing that has honey, it is antibacterial. So this was before antibiotics. They were using honey, and these days it's making a bit of a comeback. You know, we've all beekeepers on Guam. We've been asked by local veterinarians, for instance, for animals if they can have honey as an antibacterial.
Hafide, welcome to the University of Guam Triton Farm. I'd like to just show you around our aquaponics system. This is a way that we plant a lot of leafy greens and vegetables. So I'm going to run you through the aquaponics cycle this morning. The first step is fish produce fertilizer in the tank. Here we have 4 giant tanks full of hundreds of tilapia fish that are providing waste by means of poo. Their poo is used as fertilizer basically. So this fertilizer moves down to the plant growing bed, which I'll show you later. So these are the type of fertilizers that are provided by the fish waste. So we have like ammonium, potassium, nitrate, different kinds of elements that are provided just by the fish waste alone. And these are enough to provide good fertilizer for plants to grow. So as the fertilizer moves from the fish, the tank makes the water rich in plant nutrients. So as you can see here, the lettuce has the roots submerged in the water. And the roots pick up all of these fertilizers that are listed here and grow beautiful plants. So we have different types of lettuce and herbs that grow in this system. So you can see the little particles are being picked up by the roots, and in turn, the plants absorb these nutrients from their roots, which clean the water. And so all of this water becomes now more clean and blue, and there's a submersible pump that pumps it right back into the fish water. So the water is now being circulated, recirculated through the system, and nothing's being wasted. So now I can show you our fish tanks over here. We have 4 fish tanks. So come on over. Every day in the morning, twice a day, we'll feed them. And this is how the more they eat, the more they produce waste. So there's hundreds, almost thousands of fish reproducing in this tank. And we have 4 of these big tanks full of water. So again, it's recirculating. They're eating, they're providing nutrients by way of their poop as fertilizer. And as I mentioned, see this water that's spilling into the tank? This is the water that just came from feeding the plants. It's now a little more cleaner than it was, less nutrients, less nitrate, less nitrogen, less ammonium, because all of those nutrients the plants picked up. So this area is called our clarifying tank, and this is just a really basic system where we use a net to filter out big chunks of waste or baby fish. It's really important for our system because actually we don't want the fish in the raceway with the lettuce because they end up eating all of the roots, and it inhibits the growth of lettuce and the different plants. So this simple system is called a clarifying tank. It's where we keep the net bags, where we catch our little baby fish and eggs, and it prevents them from going down into the raceways. So next I'll show you the lettuce where we're growing down in the raceways. So here we are in the area where we grow a lot of our plants in the aquaponics. So there, like I said in the beginning, there's two parts to the system. There's an area where we raise the tilapia, and these are the area where we raise our plants. So as I explained, the waste from the from the tilapia comes into the start of the raceway. So this is all the fertilizer from the fish poop coming into the water, acting as a fertilizer, moving through our raceway. This is called a raceway, where we raise a lot of our plants. And what happens is that we plant one little seed in these rock wool, and it'll grow nice leafy greens or red, different types of lettuce varieties that we grow. So maybe over 10 varieties of lettuce that we grow and we sell to our community or donate. And so what happens here is the roots are submerged in the water, as you can see, and they're floating above these rafts, and all of the nutrients that are supplied from the fish that help to make plants grow really well. So this is how it supplies the fertilizer to make the plants grow. In this system, we also have an air stone. You can see that the water is bubbling here. Of course, plants need water, air, sunlight, and fertilizer, and lots of love to grow. So that's kind of how we're setting up here. So what happens is the waste comes through, all the roots pick up the nutrients, and in the end of the raceway, all of this water is cleaned and filtered and shot right back up to the fish tank. So it's recirculating, not a lot of water is wasted, and this system just keeps going round and round. So the water is cleaned back into the fish, and this cycle begins again. We feed the fish poop, pee, and all of that as fertilizer comes down, and this is a continuous cycle. So we also grow different types of herbs. This is culantro. It's kind of like a variety of cilantro that grows better in our environment and our climate. So it tastes just like cilantro, you know, for Mexican or different types of herbs and Vietnamese dishes. We love to use this really good herb. We also grow mint, is a really good one that loves this aquaponic system. It grows very well. This is peppermint. People like to use it for different kinds of foods. And also basil, sweet Italian basil. So these are the different types of herbs that really love to grow in this aquaponic system. But there's so many different varieties that can be tried. These are just the ones that we like to grow based on our community's need and response and what they want us to grow. So these are the top three herbs that people like to buy and to get. So this is what we grow.
Hafa students, I'm Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio. For more than a year now, you all have continued to wash your hands and watch your distance from others, and you've done a really great job wearing your masks. We know your parents and guardians have helped you to make these changes to keep yourself and your community safe. As Governor Leon Guerrero said, we are happy you are here. We want you to continue to learn and sharpen your skills with the help of PBS University. This program is the result of a collaborative effort. We couldn't do it alone. I'd like to thank the teachers and support staff of the Guam Department of Education and PBS Guam for their work and their commitment to our students. I'd also like to thank you students for participating at home. To your parents, I'd like to thank you for taking an active role in your child's education. We are all eager to return to a time when all of us can share and study together in person. Until then, we hope you learned something new from this PBS University instruction.